Before we start this episode, I want to mention the passing of Scott Koenig. Scott was a person I did a lot of work with. He managed bands like Biohazard, Fear Factory, and he also worked early on at Def Jam Records and Rush Communications with the Beastie Boys, Run DMC, and Slayer when I first met him. He was quite a nice person. He was just a good, hard-working person. Never heard him raise a voice. In a world that raised their voices a lot, he was a person that I always enjoyed seeing and working with. I hadn't seen him in a few years, but I do want to mention that he will be missed by many of us in the business, if not all of us in the business that ever met him.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Kevin.
Welcome back to the show.
Did you hear the helicopters just
Yeah, I
flying
did.
right
I
past?
did.
You know what that was, right? That was a bear.
A bear.
A bear south of my house, which is nowhere near the mountains. It's
That's
freaky.
what Fran says. She goes, I think there's a bear. And I go, that's way too far south, and it's over to Tony, so it had to be a shooting or something.
Yes, no, that's how badass my neighborhood is. See, we have bears with guns. They tasered him and took him off to, or not tasered.
They tasered.
No, they did.
You might as well say they
They
euthanized him.
tranquilized him, I guess.
Tranquilized him
And
took
got
him
him out
back.
of the neighborhood because
They have been coming down because
eat
there's,
kids.
there's no water.
So that's scary. Also, what is scary is that we're going to talk about something that is extremely scary to you, Kevin.
Yes, it is Halloween in general, but we're going to talk about a very special Halloween. The 2013 Great American Nightmare Haunted House that we did with a group of us, including Rob Zombie. Yeah. And man, do I have stories about that. People always ask me, they say, hey, Kevin, what was probably your biggest branding failure? I teach marketing and branding.
Right.
And you're always going to go through this stuff, and everyone, you think you're just going to talk about your successes in life. And I go, it has to be the Great American Nightmare. So I thought with this episode coming out right before Halloween, I thought it was a great time to get this story on record.
So what are your worst experiences in your life? You thought, let's just make a podcast.
Let's make a podcast about it, because that's what we do
well,
now.
it's exciting because I don't know much about this at all, really. And I'm excited to ask you a bunch of questions about it. But I heard it went poorly, to say the least.
Poorly was like that. It's that word that just like, the description of how bad this went just kept going and going. And it was no fault of any individual. It was really not a fault of any individual.
Paint a picture. Let's lead in right from the beginning. What was the thought of the idea and how did it get started?
Well, we've been doing a lot of great events. At this point, we had Warped going. We had Mayhem going.
Right. You were on a train. What year was this?
2013.
So you were on a Warped Tour high. I mean,
Warped
you guys
and Mayhem high. Things were going great. We've worked with Rob Zombie, and I got to say, Rob Zombie is probably like a pleasure overall to work with in the metal community. The metal community can sometimes not be easy to deal with. Mm-hmm. And, I can tell you that sometimes the managers, sometimes it's the agents, the artists are all usually you can kind of, work with once you get past this. But I got to tell you, working with Rob Zombie was always a pleasure. It goes all the way back till when I was working in the venues, when he was in a band called White Zombie.
Okay.
And White Zombie was this great band, just super high energy, super great energy. I always would work those shows and in the background wish I could design a set for him. Like I had this vision of a White Zombie set where it was like bones, just like this big boneyard.
Right.
And he was very agile on stage. He was moving, so he'd be like swinging on these like bone trapezes and singing. And I always say, Rob Zombie shows were theatric. If you look up the history of, White Zombie, then he became Rob Zombie when he started his solo career. But around that time, too, he was also starting to move into movies and directing movies.
Right. So leading up to this haunted house, that experience, you had really wonderful experiences with him and thought, this is the right guy to go into this with.
When we get later, it was not a bad experience with him. That's the crazy thing. It was just a combination of so many things made this thing go totally wrong. But, Rob Zombie was well known. He did a movie, House of a Thousand Corpses, which was like critically panned, but like it's a cult.
It was a success, though,
it's a cult favorite of Halloween movies, and people look back at them now and go, "Oh, those are some of the greatest movies." That was a great movie. He did movies, The Devil's Rejects, Halloween 2007. And he directed, which was like a remake of Halloween, the original movie.
Right.
We were like doing these things, and we're talking Mayhem up in San Bernardino was, probably did 20,000 people that year.
I mean, Mayhem was really successful. You had a lot of people show up to that.
Especially in San Bernardino. It was a big show.
Right.
Warped Tour in Pomona was doing great. I'm on the advisory board for the Pomona
Oh,
Fairgrounds.
that's right. You had told me about
Yeah,
that.
so it was one of those things where the fairgrounds were great with me. They were like, I had an idea. They would work out a rent deal that made it good to come in there and try, because they were trying to generate new things for the fairground. So my partner at that point was John Reese, and I don't think we're going to mention the name of the guy who built the haunted houses.
No, probably best not. Well, should we talk to the attorneys about it?
He was just a interesting guy, and we're going to talk a lot about him. But he's still building haunted houses. If you go to Chicago, they are doing a Great American Nightmare now, and Rob Zombie's involved, and I think the same haunted house builder was involved.
Well, I think if you Google Great American Nightmare 2013, the imagery that you see coming back from it is fantastical. I mean, it's spooky, it's amazing looking, but it didn't work out so well.
Well, so after the summer, it was like we talked about it over the summer. We talked about building a haunted house and doing a thing where we built the haunted house, and then in one of those big fair buildings,
Right.
And then next door we would put a venue together, and we would book a lineup of bands, and each night we would have concerts, and then people would go to the haunted house.
So for those of you who haven't been to the fairgrounds in LA County, these warehouses that you're building this haunted house in, they're massive. I mean, there's a huge cavernous, almost convention hall feel to it. So they have 30,000 square foot ones, 20,000. So this is not just a little
100,000 square foot.
Yeah,
one.
it wasn't just a little.
No.
House.
We
This
were
was
going
bananas huge.
So on the concert side, that's kind of our specialty. Me and John Reese, we were concert side. So we went and got this guy to build the haunted house. He was well known for building the haunted houses.
Right.
And then Rob and him would collaborate and build a haunted house to get together. And it'd be like 3 mazes, one of these things you see. And
Like at Knott's Berry Farm or at the Six Flags across the country.
a no-miss show. We've got our mailing list for Warped. We got
You got
Mayhem.
Rob Zombie
We could
on
get
the
all Rob
lineup,
Zombie.
right?
We could go out there and do this thing. So we started putting together like a music lineup. And we had some great bands. I mean, we had a DJ Excision come in and play one night. We had The Used come in. We had a punk night with the Vandals and TSOL and some of my friends.
Yeah.
And then a couple nights Rob Zombie would play with his band. It was like we did a Latin night. It was going to be like really cool.
Yeah.
So we put together what we thought was a good music lineup, and they started building the haunted house and the designs for it. So I really didn't. I was working with the fairgrounds, fire marshals, getting them paperwork, anything they needed from the haunted house builder.
Right.
And we fast forward to the build time, and it starts to arrive, and we're all there building it. And right away, you realize that the temperament of the person that was in charge of the haunted house was not quite as relaxed as I like things,
Specifically, what do you mean? Was he in a panic?
Well, he pulled everyone together very quickly, and it was the first time I'd ever heard this at a show. When someone yells, "Where's the fucking goat heads? I need the fucking goat heads." And when is the last time you'd ever done a show and all of a sudden I'm like, he's got the crew standing there. They're all trying to figure this out. And I look over and there's boxes. Tons of boxes are being shipped. And I look in one of the boxes and there's the goat head. And I pulled out a goat head. And I go, "Is this missing goat head?" Things like. So we build a haunted house. And when you do a haunted house, you have to go hire a lot of actors and things for it.
Yeah.
When you do Knott's Scary Farm, Disney, you do Universal Fright Nights, you
Right.
do those things. They hire a lot of actors.
That's right.
And they go through a big process to hire these people.
Well, they have to vet them. I mean, what you have to realize is that these people are doing jump scare type stuff. There's got to be a training process of, hey, don't stick, your finger in somebody's eye. That's a bad thing.
Well, so we had, no offense, but we probably got all the people that got rejected, maybe from every haunted house in the whole.
This is not starting well.
No, I start to ask because I'm starting to learn that they do
Hey, what was the vetting process for getting these
all of a sudden
people?
these people just show up and they're going to be trained, and there's characters, and one of a big one was Captain Spaulding, which is a reoccurring character in Rob's movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the maze is coming together, and I'm there with the fairground people, and they're setting it up, and there was one part where you have to walk into a big vagina.
This is a Halloween scary show, right?
Yeah, the scare. So it's like this big vagina that you walk through to go into one of the mazes.
Awesome.
And I'm like walking around with my fair people, and they're kind of looking at it a little sketchy.
Kevin, what the hell? I mean, you were on the board of directors for the fairgrounds.
So-
Good. This is great, Kevin. Good job.
And I hadn't any experience in haunted houses, so I'm like, maybe all haunted houses are like this. I don't know. so we're kind of in a rush. We're setting this up, and one of the mazes was like murder rooms, like the Sharon Tate murder room, the John Wayne Gacy murder room.
Right. Theme murderers.
Crew setting them up. You know, there's things trapped. There's things that swing. There's all this stuff kind of going on. So we're kind of building. I still don't understand. We're not seeing it. And then all of a sudden I'm looking, we're not selling any tickets pre-sale. Like we're not
just
really,
hoping they show.
we're not getting much response. Like I'm like, hey, how can it not, like everyone, all these other ones, you stand in line forever. Wouldn't you want to come to our haunted house? Well, we open the haunted house up. We have a concert. And right away, I start to realize that maybe concerts and a haunted house aren't the best thing. Like people want to come to a haunted house.
Unlike peanut butter cups, not two great tastes that taste great together.
Exactly. So we're sitting there, and I think the first night maybe 300 people, but we're starting soft.
All right, well
we're starting in late September. Starting soft. But the amazing part of this was I'm pretty good projector in my mind, like going, oh, this is going downhill. Like this is going to be a tough month. I'll never forget, like Matt, our accountant, John, they were constantly figuring out like projections and money, I think. And all I'm looking is, this is bad. I don't need a calculator. I don't need to sit there all night.
You can tell.
And they'd be hovering over the computers, like trying to figure out like where this is going. We were starting in late September through November, so it was a pretty long haunted house.
Right.
So get to the second night, things are okay. I realized that the actors aren't happy though, because like they weren't given water, they weren't given breaks. I hear this whisper that they're going to go to the labor board, complain about the work conditions. So, of course I run out, I get them drinks, I get them sodas,
Sure.
Start talking to them, making sure, doing whatever we can, because the haunted house guy just did not have a great way with people.
Right.
So we kind of get going, but you have to realize that you've been to a haunted house where you put an X on your head if you don't want them to touch you. This was a touch haunted house, okay? So the touch haunted house is you put a big X on your head, and if you're going to the haunted house and you have an X, they're not supposed to touch you. Well, about the second or third night, I get a radio call. Hey, Captain Spaulding's been beaten up by one of the patrons. We go like rushing over there, and there's our Captain Spaulding in his like costume, like the shit beat out of him. Right? And all he's saying is, she didn't have an X. Like as he's going in and out of consciousness.
She didn't have an X.
She didn't have an X. There is no Trauma One medical center in Pomona anymore.
No, great. So he needed a trauma one.
Oh yeah. So we have to get a helicopter to land to take him.
She beat the shit
No,
out of Captain.
she didn't beat him up. It was the boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
The boyfriend beat him
but
up.
Still,
So we've now got the boyfriend like arrested. We're trying to explain this. The police are kind of standing there. He's getting arrested. The helicopter's taking Captain Spaulding off. So that was like night two.
Night two.
So
and at what point did you realize you probably didn't buy enough liability
Well,
insurance?
so I'm calling Fran going, and I have to, oh, great, I didn't even go back to this. Like, I'm driving out there every day from Pasadena to Pomona at 2 p.m. We know what that traffic's like, right?
Right, it's horrible.
You're just driving in traffic to get out there. So I'm driving out there. So after day 2, I call Fran and explain. I go, we just had a medevac, like a clown got his ass kicked. Like, and I'm going, this is really feeling weird, because now we've only drawn like 400 or 500 people, like the second night. There's the two of them over their computer, like figuring out the projections. They're just getting worse. You're just pushing it down the road, like this loss. And I'm already in my mind going, well, partners, wow, this is gonna be a big loss.
So explain to me, who were your partners? If Rob Zombie was a partner.
Well, Rob was a partner, but he wasn't financial. There was the Halloween haunted house builder, myself, and John Reese. And, we had this strange operating agreement, because it was like, we're going to do this, and Rob's attorneys send over this like 35-page operating agreement. I go, I'm not signing a 35-page operating agreement. So I sent back a 5-line operating agreement. It said, Kevin, Rob, John, and agree to build a haunted house. All proceeds from the haunted house go to pay the expenses. At the end of this, if there is a loss on this, responsible party is Kevin, John, and haunted house builder. Line 4. After everything is done, if there's any money left, we will split it up equally. Line 5. We will then decide if we want to do this again. So I sent that back and said, that's the operating agreement. So we were operating under that agreement for year 1.
Really?
Yeah.
And their attorneys were okay with that?
Well,
You're
was just,
brilliant,
we were
Kevin.
just going to do it. Because I said, I'm not going to go through this right
One way
now.
to do business.
And we did. So night 2, okay? Night 3, it was like 3-4 nights a week we were doing this. Drew a few more people. But like after week 1, it was like, this is not like.
But the thing was, there wasn't a lot of people coming. Basically, you're having your ass handed to you. You're losing your ass. But at what point did it, I mean, getting your lead actor, the shit beat out of him, that's a pretty ominous start.
That was a good part of the week. So, and I don't mean it but flippantly, but so the second week comes up and I get tipped off that said, hey, you guys are going to get raided by Vice.
What?
Yeah.
For what?
So there were some issues with the LA County Fair going on deeper than a haunted house.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So one of
this
the
2013.
Yeah, so one of the county supervisors had heard about this haunted house and heard that these exhibits were maybe a little on the 18 plus side.
Yes.
So I get tipped off that, hey, you might get read. All I'm thinking is like, Kevin Lyman, who's worked his whole life to try to put on good shows for youth, arrested in a Vice raid for a haunted house. I'm just going, there goes your whole career over this thing, So I'm like, I get to the venue that day. I go, that's it. And I ran through and we ripped down anything that might have been allude to.
Kind of like walking through a big vagina, right?
Things like that. And there was like the John Wayne Gacy murder room, things like, so, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, so everyone got there and we said, okay, now we have to make it 18 and over. So we get that cleaned up. And sometime over the second week, by now I'm like exhausted. Like I'm driving out there, kind of depressed. But I also realized what I started to do was go, one thing I can control is really try to book a great Warped Tour lineup, like really dig into it. So I'd sit in my car and listen to it, trying to make a positive, like something positive in my life, because this was just miserable. It's cold. You're out there working. There's no one there. It seemed to always be foggy too. And there's also this like amazing Oktoberfest they have at the fair. Here's our haunted house. We're trying to figure out, can we do 2-for-1 specials? We're trying to get people to latch onto it. I go over to the Oktoberfest each night, and it's packed. And all they do is sell beer and have an oom-pah-pah band. And everyone's beating the hell out of each other. It's total brawl. They're like at bar rule brawl. But it's so cool because I'm just over there. There's people. And I'm like, come over to my haunted house. Come, you could beat people up over here too. And, it was like trying to get people to do this thing. And around Saturday night, I think it was the second weekend, everyone had left. And there's one guy standing there. And I'm trying to pack up. I just want to get out of there. And he comes up to me and goes, hey, I have a complaint. And I'm like, yeah, what's your complaint? And he goes, the Sharon Tate murder room is not realistic enough.
Okay. Sorry, pal.
No.
We'll try harder next year.
This is like 1 a.m. and you're standing in a parking lot talking to someone whose eyes are like glazed over and really upset that the murder room wasn't realistic enough.
What did he tell you? Because when I actually committed the murder, the bed was over here. Her blood was splattered on this wall, not that wall.
I'm like digging in my pockets now. Like, can I refund your money? Anything like trust me, it was a little like, I hope I'm beyond this in life.
And
like,
it's at the end of the show. It's 1:00 in the morning, right? Are you freaked out a little bit?
I'm a little freaked out. And I'm kind of going, this is what it's come to in my life. Like I'm standing in a parking lot arguing the reality of a murder room.
That's when you realize you arrived. Kevin Lyman.
So this is like end of week 2. We had a couple good concerts. The Punk Right night drew people. It was a pretty good night. The Used, I think, did. So, but it just wasn't connecting. We had Excision, a big DJ.
Right.
It just wasn't connecting. But they're still over the computers all night figuring out, like, maybe if we do this, maybe if they...
Hey, man, they got to figure out
do
how
it. So,
to break
and
even
we're running around trying to make this all work, taking care of we're losing actors at this point. They're getting like other jobs or, one guy told me that I asked, so where did this guy show up? And they go, oh, his parole board picked him up. I'm like, awesome. Like, okay, great. So I'm calling Fran and she's like, every time the phone rings, I think of another disaster. Like, what else could be going wrong at that thing?
Mm-hmm.
Get to week 3, and the first hour of week 3, come to the maze. Someone's hurt in the maze. And I'm like,
God.
So they had this trap door where it said, do not cross, do not enter. It was all taped off. Someone stepped over it and got whacked by the door. This trap door opened, flung him into the wall, and like dislocated their shoulder.
Oh.
So I think that one turned into some sort of liability issue.
You think?
We had, every night there was someone just getting hurt, but we didn't have to do any more medevacs at least.
Oh, there's that.
The crowds aren't there. It was like, I'm sitting there going, you know what? And this is what I started to realize. Halloween is really about boo Halloween. People like boo Halloween.
Well, yeah. I mean, even adults like boo Halloween.
But boo Halloween is like going to Knott's Berry Scary Farm or Universal.
I have a bone to pick with you, by the way, Halloween. I had a dead rock and roll Halloween party. We had met about 4 years ago, much longer, but 4 years ago I had the party, and you had a rock and roll cruise and stole my theme.
Oh, that's right. We were on the cruise. I stole that for the Warp crew, the Warp theme.
But I hear what you're saying about the boo mentality.
They do not want disturbed Halloween.
Well, I mean, some people do. Some people are into that. Like, even at Universal Studios, for years there was this zombie walkthrough thing that was almost like a jump scare house, but it was pretty intense. It wasn't Halloween for kids. It scared the shit out of me.
This was disturbed Halloween.
It was.
This was just like fans of, Rob Zombie stuff for a true like horror person is intense. Like it's intense, his movie. So those super fans, and it's funny because I was thinking about super fans this weekend when I was down at Ohana, when I told you I was going down there with Pearl Jam, how though that event has turned into a Pearl Jam super fan fest.
Sure, of course.
And these were super fans of Rob Zombie. They weren't casual haunted house people.
Right.
They were still going to the other events. So we went on with this thing, and by the end of the whole thing, I'd lost almost mid 6 figures was my share.
God.
Everyone lost big money on this thing. We had to write checks. We had the county. We stayed out of jail. Advice on that. We had people injured.
I feel sorry because, Halloween is one of my favorite holidays. After writing a mid 6-figure check, probably Halloween's not your favorite holiday.
I did learn that, you can't just jump. Being successful in one thing does not make you successful in everything or all things.
No, of course not.
And, though this combination was so good, you think about the branding on this thing, the people, everyone, and it was something that we tried. And it's one of those things I regret trying it? Maybe a little, but it's also, I learned that to be much more selective in what you choose to do.
Sure. I mean, it's not that, I like Halloween things, but I like boo Halloween things. So, I'm smart enough to know if you're taking me to a jump scare type of a Halloween thing, I can't help myself. Even if I had an X painted on my forehead, I'm going to instinctively punch somebody right in the face if they get in my Kool-Aid. I can't help it. So I know not to go to those things. But to be able to have a full concert venue with the Halloween haunted house, I honestly wouldn't have thought on the onset that would be a bad decision to put together. I thought that sounds cool to me.
And when Rob Zombie played, he played the last couple nights. He played a couple nights of this. They were sold out. They were packed. So probably on a marketing side, we maybe should have started with him.
Yeah.
So we got a word of mouth going. We just never got the word of mouth going. And that's what I always tell people. It's how you get the word of mouth going. And that even went back to Warped Tour, like where we would live stream those first shows. We would live stream them, cut it into pieces, marketing pieces, send it out, and that would help drive tickets in the future. We made a mistake there. Rob should have probably played the first weekend. Maybe those people would have gone out and said, hey, you should go to this haunted house. It would have helped. But we just never got momentum, and we couldn't do enough marketing behind it. Now, we packed up this haunted house. We took it like ahead of time. And by the end of this, it's like, now we've got to actually take it down. I just wanted to burn it. Like, I was just like...
It'd probably be cheaper. Whoops.
I was like...
Whoops. Somebody threw a cigarette out.
I was like, can we just put this in a pile out in there and do like Burning Man? Like, isn't it kind of out there?
That's one way to handle it.
we put it on these giant containers. We had to buy shipping containers. The plan was to store it for the next year. Right away, we knew we weren't going to do this again. So these shipping containers are like sitting, and the fair was awesome. They let them sit out in the parking lot for about 8 months, and they're like, Kevin, you got to get these out of here. Like,
Right.
haven't picked up. So, Steve did arrange for, trucks to come and haul these containers off. And I was never so happy to see something roll down the 10 freeway east. Dakota Gartner is someone who was one of my interns, very similar to like a kid over there called Xavier, that I saw a lot of potential in. So Dakota came to me as an intern, like many people do. And as I've told my students through the years, it's like, at the end of your internship, I know, money's tight as a student, but I always think a smart thing to do is take your boss or supervisor out to lunch and say, I'd like to take you to lunch. It doesn't have to be fancy. Take them to Jersey Mike's, wherever you want to go,
Right.
And you just say, hey, I really enjoyed the internship. And if you really want to work for that company, this is your one shot to say, I was able to observe a lot as an intern, but I think I could bring something to the company. And Dakota did that. Dakota took me to lunch and said, hey, Kevin, here's the thing. I hear you all the time saying you don't have time to book your speaking gigs. Your agent's not getting you enough speaking gigs. This is when I was doing a lot of
Right.
college speaking and touring. Give me a chance. He goes, you have a pretty good social media. Why don't you just put it out on social media? If you'd like Kevin Lyman to come speak at your school, contact Dakota at Fort Phoenix. Give me an email address and let me see what I could do. And you know what? I put it out, and he booked me like 12 gigs within the first month. He went with me on a trip once. We went and did a bunch of the universities and colleges up in Wisconsin. He mapped out the little road trip. We drove around, and we did this. So Dakota was eager that way. He was also a great guy in the sense of that he really good personality, good fun, good personality. The only conflict he had was he was in a band, and we know how that is. Sometimes
Right.
being in a band and becoming a professional is that conflict.
Yeah.
So eventually, Dakota decided that he was going to go, focus a bit on
Be a
the
rock
band.
star.
Be a rock star. He worked a lot of shows. He's here or there. He's actually just out on tour with Pearl Jam.
Oh, cool.
He's been out on the road with Pearl Jam the last few weeks. He's got another band again now. I guess he's been. I saw him play. We went to the first time they played a garage show a while back.
So what did Dakota do on the Rob Zombie haunted house show?
He was the kind of production assistant. We all kind of did everything. You
Right.
know, it was you've been hired. You're going to come work. You might have to tear tickets. Well, we didn't have to worry about that because about one person did. You could come tear tickets. You're going to be building, but he was there for the whole build.
Right.
So he would get yelled at by this haunted house builder all the time. Seemed to be the guy that he would yell at all the time, because Dakota was also in charge of getting all the boxes from shipping and receiving and things. So when there's the lost goat heads, who's getting yelled at? Dakota.
The concept at first was so amazing. I can remember sitting in our office and all of the different plans and designs being hung up in our meeting room. And it was so cool. And it seemed like it would be so successful. But I think that where we went wrong is that we just didn't understand how important Halloween culture is to amusement parks in Los Angeles. And, remember, the slogan was, if you're scared, go to a fucking amusement park. And I think that immediately kind of made it so that event was something that all the amusement parks were going to take down. Not to mention the fact that we were a little bit out of LA and so on and so forth. So it's so interesting to watch this thing that we expected to do so well be so not good. I watched you and Reese be bummed, be really, really bummed. And you were my mentors. And so to watch that, it was very interesting for me because I had to kind of watch you guys swallow your pride in that,
Yeah, swallow our pride and empty our wallets.
Yeah, for real though. I mean, and understandably so. You guys lost a lot of money on that one there.
Do you have any funny stories from that? I don't know, funny or tragic stories?
We had all of these shipments that were coming to our office, and I was one of the only people that was receiving them throughout the summer while you guys were on Warped Tour. So I was getting all of these things, and I ended up like literally renting some type of a carrier van and bringing everything out by myself. And so I knew what was there, but I also didn't know what were in the boxes. And I was a kid, right? And so was really, really mean and a yeller. And so he started, and you were for some reason, like, Kevin, you really liked me. And so you like came back and screaming about all this shit, and he's saying, "Where are the fucking goat heads? Where are the fucking goat heads?" And I'm scrambling, like, what are these goat heads that he needs? I don't understand what this is. And you kind of like didn't know what was going on, and you nonchalant like walked into the big ass warehouse, or the air hangar where we were building this thing, and you kind of just like kicked a box, and you're like, and it was the goat head, and you picked it up, and you're like, these ones, like, so nonchalant. And I think that, for 5 years after that, those years of my joke, there was one situation where there was a kid he had a squirt gun, and the monsters, like, basically what we had said is that if you put blood, like a blood mark on your head, the monsters could be like more intense with you. And so they'd come up and they'd scream in your face, and they'd touch you. And so this family had done that, and this kid was like spraying this monster with the squirt gun, and the monster freaked out and was like cussing this kid out. And so the dad walked up and just knocked the guy in his, like, right in his temple, like, broke his eye socket, and he had to be like airlifted out of the whole place. And that was like not the only time that happened. Like, multiple times these monsters got beat up, or they had like records, or it was just like, we did not do good background checks, or enough background checks to make sure. And when you're doing monsters and those people are just scaring people, how are you supposed to do that? But man, I can't even, like, the amount of times that you were having to deal with like cops or fights or issues like that were just like, I can't even count on one hand.
We're just going to call some people and see the reaction when we ask them about the Great American Nightmare. We're going to call Kate Truscott. We got her on the phone and asked her impressions, and she had quite some memories of the Great American Nightmare.
Hi, Kate. How are you? You're live on the My Warp Life broadcast.
Oh, hi.
We got a question for you while we're here. Can you give us your thoughts on the Great American Nightmare?
Oh, dear God. Yeah, I mean, it was a really great idea. It just didn't work, and it was awful to live through.
What was the worst part of it? I mean, what was the most traumatic part for you?
For me, the most traumatic part was like watching how hard it was for you and for the team that was there trying to make it work. And there was just nothing we tried everything we could to save it and to make it work, because it was cool. Like, I went through it. I saw it. It was awesome. Like, it was built really well and all of that. But the hardest part was like, I can remember talking to you during it, and you were like, we just got to get through October. We just got to get through October. Like, and it was just like soul crushing to watch how hard everyone was working, and it just wasn't taking off. And that for me, that was the hardest part. I mean, professionally speaking, like, we couldn't sell sponsorships to that thing to save our lives. Nobody wanted it. It was wild.
Do you think it was just that nobody wanted to go? I mean, it wasn't a bad concept and it wasn't a bad setup, but nobody turned out. Was that the issue?
No. Nobody turned out. Nobody bought tickets. It was not at all family friendly, and it was too, I think, like, maybe Pomona was a little too remote.
Let's back up a bit. What do you mean not family friendly? And can you give details?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was very adult. Like, there were parts where you were being like I cried, and I was probably 35 when it came out. 34.
What do you mean? Like, they scared the shit out of you, or they made you cry, like the Great Santini?
Like, I'm a baby. I'm a big fat baby, and I admit that. But like the actors like got up in your face, and there was a part where you were wearing a hood, and like the walls would like shock you, And then there was another section where you literally had to walk through a giant labia to get into another part of the thing. It was like
Jesus
probably
Christ!
20 or 30 foot high legs spread wide open, and you had to walk straight through it.
There's an argument to be said that it's not that you guys didn't do a good job. I think maybe you did such a good job, you scared the shit out of everybody, and nobody came.
Yeah, I mean, it was terrifying. And I think we thought that Zombies' fan base would turn out more, and it just didn't. And, we were there for the whole month. We had artists playing, and I think it was really ambitious, and unfortunately it didn't pan out. Like, we had national press. We had, like, the Great Cupcake Wars or Great Bake Off or something like that. Did an episode from there. Like, there was no lack of attention for it. It just, for some reason, it just didn't connect. It was
You
weird.
had the Great Bake Off.
Yeah, the Bake Off was there. Did their Halloween special
Yeah.
there.
The Cupcake Wars, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did the Halloween special from there on our opening night. I mean, we had celebrities coming out. Like, we did a lot, but, like, for whatever reason, we just couldn't get, it just didn't connect. I don't know why, but it was fucking horrible to live through. It was absolutely awful. And I wasn't even on the ground on it. I was already living in Nashville by then. And so just, like, to have our crew that was in California living there and, like, all the corners that we had to cut and, like, all the things we had to get, it just was awful.
Who was responsible for promoting the event?
It was great. It was all our marketing teams.
Yeah. It was
Everyone was-
ours. I mean, and, like, it was everywhere.
It was
And
everywhere.
For whatever reason, it was, like, it just didn't. I think in Southern California, like, you've got, like, Not Scary Farm and then, like, Universal and Disney and, like, those are all things where you can do, like, the whole family or a date or, like, whatever. So for this, you had to have a real, like it was genuinely scary. It was 3 parts. The first part, you had to wear a hood, and if you touched the walls, you got shocked. And there was a real, like, you had to sign something ahead of time that said you either did or did not want to be touched by the cast members. And they had to put a mark on your forehead, I think, that said that you would allow them to touch you or not. And then from there, you went into, like, a neon part that was, like, super hyper-sexualized. That was where you had to walk through the legs to get in. And then on the last part was, like, a tour through vignettes of, like, all of the worst, like, most infamous serial killers sets. And the smell that they were pumping in there they were doing it on purpose. It was terrifying.
It was like rotting
absolutely
flesh.
Disgusting. Yeah, it smelled like rotting flesh and blood and gunpowder. It was awful. But it was like there was this weird dreamscape of like Dahmer on trial by Dahmer. Like, it was weird. And then there was another one where you were, like, standing outside of, like, the Manson house while the murders were happening, and, like, Gacy. Like, I can't remember. Maybe it was the Manson thing. Like, we got like, cease and desist because they said that we were traumatizing people from Southern California because those murders were real, and we were, like, making light of it or whatever.
That's
We got this, and then years later,
You got a
when-
cease
when
and
the Great
desist
American
letter from
Nightmare moved to
who?
Illinois, and they had the Gacy thing. They got the same press
Yeah.
saying that it was traumatizing and it was, like, too close to home to have anything involving Gacy.
Oh, that's
The whole
right.
experience was a total mindfuck. It was crazy. everything about it should have worked, and it just didn't. It was one of those bizarre situations. And then, like, as someone who cares about the employees of, like, the stage managers and the production crew and the, Kevin and the whole team that was out there trying to make it work, like, it was really difficult to watch and to just be like, fuck, man, like, I can't wait till this month. I've never wanted a month to end so badly in my life. Like, when we finished tour, no matter how tired I am, I was always like, oh, I could do this more. Like, I love being on tour with my friends. When that month was over, I was like, thank fuck, bring on Thanksgiving. Like, it was bad.
All right. Well, great, Kate. We appreciate you jumping on. We're gonna put this is gonna be part of our Halloween episode.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Good to
Kate.
talk to you.
Thanks for jumping in. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
See
Bye bye.
you later.
That's hilarious. See, she explained it much clearer.
Oh, that's right.
She said, fuck, basically. Jesus
When
Christ.
she brought up that they had the whole thing about, being the Manson house. And of course, we made the news.
I
And
don't know.
that
Who gives you a
was-
cease and desist order for bad taste?
Oh, yeah. It was
Because
just,
basically that's what they said.
well, that's what
you guys
that's,
have bad taste.
That's what kind of triggered the whole Gloria Molina's office coming and investigating and realizing that they sent someone to see what was going on and that they saw the Gacy room.
Oh, and that's why that they
that's
had
when they were going to
brought
send
people.
Vice in just over
Oh.
that whole thing. Oh, I was traumatized, Tony. Literally, I would sit out in the parking lot and just sit there in the car. But it did allow me to book we had a great summer because all I did was try to focus on the positive.
But let me ask you this. After this event, this complete fuck all of an event, did you remain on the board at Pomona Valley
Yeah, I
Fairgrounds?
didn't get kicked off.
They didn't kick you off?
No, they didn't kick
Well,
me
that's
off.
good. See, that's a testament to your amazing character.
I wonder if we should get a little bit from Matt Ballas, the accountant. Should I call him? Yeah. Okay. Hey, Matt, you're live on the My Warp Life podcast. We're sitting here in our backyard. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
So we're doing an episode that you might lend some insight because I've always had a question. This is our Halloween episode, and we're discussing the Great American Nightmare.
Ooh. Ooh, that was rough.
Wow.
The Great American Nightmare was rough. The best part of the Great American Nightmare was that right next door was the Oktoberfest. And people would go and get hammered at the Oktoberfest and then go to the haunt and the haunted house and just beat up the
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. This is Tony. That's great. What is your fondest memory of the great Halloween haunt?
There was one kid that came upstairs with one of the actors. All the actors were, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them, I don't know where they were from. But it was like the guys that couldn't get unemployment, that were looking for a job, and this is where they wound up. There was a kid that came upstairs with his father, and his father was one of the actors, and the kid he had to be like 10, and he was talking about dropping out of school, and his father was so proud, and the kid was probably in the 5th grade. That was probably my fondest memory, which tells you how bummer that thing was. I don't know. I can't think any more about the Great American Nightmare.
So, Matt, there's one thing each night, I was telling him about our, individually our mid 6-figure loss on that thing for the partners. But each night you and John would sit over your computers like genies trying to figure out how this was financially going to turn around. When did you finally, did you ever give up on that, or did you keep, working on it the whole?
I don't think I ever gave up on it because John has the heart of a lion. So he would sit there and just try to figure out how it wasn't going to lose everybody their homes. But I think we gave up every night. But then we would just do it again the next day. We gave up every single time. Damone was there for like 20 minutes. Do you remember him? I mean, it wasn't Damone, it was Indy. Indy was there. I remember that had the whole system worked out with the deck of playing cards, and everybody was ready for thousands and thousands of people.
Oh, that's right. We hired Indy, and we had to send him home because there was no money to count.
There was nothing to do. I mean, you didn't need a safe or anything.
Yeah, it was like
There was no cash.
Yeah, no, there was the cash was kept in a little box, not even like
Shoebox.
It was not even a shoebox. It was smaller. That's how much cash.
Your wallet.
And we probably used it to get water. It was ridiculous. Have you ever heard from ever again or no?
No, never.
Good for you. Good for you.
All right. Cool, Matt. I appreciate you calling in. That's going to give us a little clip.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Have a good one.
Take care.
I want to lead into this next segment. I want to ask you now, one of the things that we're doing is, because Kevin has picked winners for so long, his entire career, we want every episode for Kevin to pick a new artist. And Kevin, you got a new artist this week you want to introduce?
Yeah, I mean, this is really fun. We're gonna have some fun with this episode because I was kind of going through my Twitter and some kids were posting some things up, and a young woman named Maggie Schneider does these amazing mashups of like Warped Tour songs from each year. And I had the great chance to interview her and talk to her and learn about her music career outside of what she does for fun on TikTok.
I just got introduced to her. The producer sent me her TikTok, and the first thing that popped up was she covered Hamilton, and she did punk rock version of Hamilton. And I thought that was cool. I really liked it.
I am the frontwoman of a band called Glimmers, but 5 or 6 years prior to that, I was a solo artist. So I just put music up as Maggie Schneider under my solo name, played the last Atlanta date of Warped Tour. So I got to do that, which was very exciting for me. And then this past year decided to move forward with a band instead. And when we're not playing shows, I love to use TikTok, not only to like showcase all the emo stuff that I love, but to make mashups and fun pieces of content that, you know, still kind of bring back that nostalgia and the type of music that got me into this in the first place.
You formed a band. Did you form it before the pandemic or in the middle of the pandemic?
So funny enough, we formed it in the middle. So I started performing just me and an acoustic guitar. I would open for these pop punk emo shows, like just as an acoustic act. And I loved it, but it got to the point years later that I really wanted like that full band sound, the camaraderie that comes with being in a full band. So I started auditioning backing band members, and years later found my lovely boys. And when the pandemic started, that was when we made the shift to rebrand everything and made the decision to say, okay, we're going to kind of let go of Maggie Schneider as a solo act and transition into Glimmers.
After talking to her for a while, I said, hey, do you got a guitar handy? And she says, I do. She played some songs live for us on the show.
Life's been in a kind of holding pattern, endless delays and dead-end runways, never gaining speed or taking flight. Rain clouds filled my heart and shadows blurred my eyes. You were always there, but never mind. And at the right place, not the right time. We need to start crossing that line now. I need you now. For me, it's you. Always you. You're the missing beat of my heart that I hear in the dark. It's true.
Oh, you know what, Tony?
Huh.
You know what's on my mind?
What is on your mind, kid?
Facebook.
Facebook.
Are you kidding me? Like, it took this long to realize that they're kind of behind the downfall of America? Like, really? I mean, you saw this whole thing. Great that the woman came out, the whistleblower came out. But, man, did you see those dumbass? Did you see the hearing? Did you watch it?
It was ridiculous. He's the puppet master. And the denial. Did you see the ad? I actually saw a commercial ad on Facebook that came out after she made their announcement saying, hey, trust us. We're really trying.
Is it not time to actually elect some people that know what Facebook is? Like, when they're doing a congressional hearing,
that was ridiculous.
the congressional hearing is amazing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, we need younger people to run for offices,
They're
which leads to me like
amazingly uninformed.
we're already ramping up the I Voted campaign, Tony. We're getting on it right now. We're starting to lock in venues for 2022. There is no time too early to get started with getting people registered because we need some younger people in office. We need people that can sit there and really understand what is going on with social media, with the internet, and actually clamp down on this because
Well, I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but at some point, regulation, some type of oversight and regulation. But if they're so uninformed, how are they going to regulate something they don't understand?
Absolutely.
And I mean, we do it for broadcast television. Eventually, it's going to get to that point.
It's going to have to. I mean, the FCC clamps down on you guys all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very restrictive.
I mean, just simple broadcast standards. Like you can't, raise the volume of a commercial higher than the broadcast there. Simple things like that are tightly regulated with the FCC and broadcast, but social media is just like
that was crazy.
Wild West.
Like they took down Alex Jones on YouTube, but there's like a guy that's the Korean Alex Jones.
Oh, you saw that on last week tonight? Did you see
that?
that? Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah,
like,
it's nuts.
I mean, the stuff that's pointed out on a daily basis that most people know, we need to do something. So follow us on Facebook.
Or Instagram.
So everyone go have a great Halloween. Enjoy someone else's haunted house. It doesn't mean you have to do it yourself.
That's right.
And a safe Halloween this year. I think people can go out again this year.
Dr. Fauci just yesterday has approved trick-or-treating for the kiddies. So that's cool.
Now, and I'm a big supporter of Fauci, but it's interesting. I've seen things, it's like we seem to approve like NCAA sports, like big audiences, big crowd.
Did you see that college game? I think it was Alabama. Some of the top seed got one. There was over 100,000 people in that bowl, man.
I think we're kind of looking at better. Like right now, things are looking better. We still have to be careful. Halloween, and that's followed right behind by Thanksgiving. I think we're going to do we're resurrecting the big Thanksgiving at the house in one way, maybe in one way or another. I'm feeling positive with the students are starting to, see them. They're getting engaged. That everyone kind of has found what this new semi-norm is.
I'm actually looking forward to it. It's my favorite holiday. The last two Halloweens sucked.
I was always working Halloween, so I don't know. We used to do backyard parties in Halloween and
the best
band. I put on bands. Of course, I'd have like 8 bands play and beer and stuff.
I'd like to thank Ginger Chen for joining our Patreon recently, and thank you so much for supporting the My Warp Life podcast. Thank you, Ginger, and have a wonderful day. Once again, I want to thank Metal Fortress for sharing all our episodes on their radio stations. That's Metal Fortress. Haven't seen you guys in a while, but thanking you so much for your support of the My Warp Life podcast.
Thank you to all our guests for taking the time to come share their stories. Even though we had to call them, it was like in real time, our guest on this episode.
Check out Maggie Schneider and Glimmers, and her TikTok is pretty cool. And thanks for listeners making it this far. We're 16 now? We're cranking them out.
Episode 16, I know. Think about that. We've been doing this now for about half a year.
This is 18.
See? We shouldn't drink when we do podcasts, Kevin.
I didn't drink. I had like a liquid death water, and you had your weird water. We're having like conflict. We're mixing our drinks today.
That's right. Let them fight at the table.
Subscribe to our Spotify, Apple, YouTube pages to know when new things are happening.
And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook, and get yourself an interview and be on the show.
If you want to hear more from us and our guests, subscribe to our Patreon to hear more exclusive content and get a discount on our merch. Plus, a subscription to My Warp Life might make a great gift for a friend.
And don't forget to text us on any topics you want to hear more about at 818-863-6445.
That's 818-863-6445. I have truly enjoyed responding to all your text messages, so be sure to send them to me. I want to thank Xavier Bradley, Vivian Wang, Beata Shemtov, and Diego Arratia, and my friend Tony over there. Thank you for dropping by.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Take it away, kid.